Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Six Pack Chick, Victoria Scott, and I am going to give you guys my week 5 and week 6 mini cut update today combined. So if you've been following along with the series, every week I've been giving you sort of the play-by-play on how my week has gone in terms of training, macros, adjustments, deviations, and just anything else going on. And then also answering some of your Q&A questions that I get frequently on Instagram, so I can go into some things in more detail. This week I'm doing week 5 and 6 combined because we have been traveling and I didn't get to record my week 5 video the previous week. So you guys are getting a 2-in-1. Also, week 5, we'll talk about it, was mostly uneventful. We were traveling and I did a whole lot of nothing in terms of training. So I'm really considering that a maintenance week. I do have my spreadsheet here. And now if you have followed along, I've showed you guys the spreadsheet that I am tracking my workouts, my cardio steps, my meal plan. So I do follow a meal plan for my high and low days, and then also my weight. So week 5, end of July, starting August, really was became a maintenance week for me. And the way that I like to explain it to my clients is, say you are doing a 16-week cut, but you have a diet break or a week off vacation on week 5. And then on week 10, you're sick. And then on week 13, something else happens, right? So when you're looking at your progress, you don't want to include those weeks. So I actually remove those weeks. And even though it's a 16-week cut phase, if you had, say, 3 weeks that were essentially at maintenance, I would pull those weeks out and say, okay, well, it was really 13 weeks of fat loss. And then what was the average rate of loss during that time? So for me, this is a mini cut. I am on week 6, or just completed week 6. And now basically week 5 was a wash. So of the 6 weeks, 5 weeks were what I call working weeks. And where I've landed as of right now, 155.8. Now I started this mini cut at 161.4. So I'm just about 5 pounds, a little less than 5 pounds down over the course of 5 weeks, which is actually really good. I'm pretty happy with that. I wasn't 100% sure that I was going to take a maintenance week, to be brutally honest, but once we sort of left, I really just decided that I wanted to take that time and just be at maintenance. Now, maintenance doesn't mean a free-for-all. I was not just indulging in whatever I wanted to do. I really just didn't train. I didn't do cardio, but I did track my steps, and my steps were actually quite high because we were walking a lot. We took the dogs with us, so lots of walking around, sort of being a tourist in our old hometown. Yeah, my average steps was above my total daily steps for the whole week was just around, well, the ones I tracked, so I had 2 days that my watch died. So excluding that, I hit 55,000 steps plus. There's probably more than that. When I got back, I did have 1 training day on week 5. I did arms. Arms, and I did about an hour on the bike. I ended week 5 a little bit up, but that was only 1 metric. I only took 1 scale metric that week. So even though it was a little bit up from the previous week, I know it wasn't a real reflection of my whole week. So when I got to week 6, right back on plan. I hit 4 training sessions. I did about, I logged 195 minutes of cardio total for the whole week. My step count was actually, it's showing that it's down again. I had 2 days I did not wear my watch again. So it's hard for me to really say what my total steps were that week. But I was mindful to just try to keep the steps up. We did make an adjustment to my nutrition. We did pull carbs down just slightly. Yeah, my average calories are around 1690. Average calories, which is great. It's not super low just yet. And then, yeah, my weight dropped back down. My average for week 6, 155.8. So that's where I'm sitting as of today, and really happy with my progress photos. I feel like my body looks really just rested and healthy, which is really the goal. Right now, I am not trying to be stage lean. I'm not trying to be shredded. I'm really just trying to get back to where I feel is a good maintenance for me. So my goal at the end of this is going to be 153. So I have some time. We will be going to Cabo about 5 days. So week 7 is really, I'm gonna try to squish in all of my training before we go on this next trip. So I'm gonna front load my week. We leave on Friday. So I've got 4 days to continue like the trajectory that I've been on. I had a really, really good solid week 6. I'm gonna just finish week 7 strong, go on this trip, and then I'm also planning that week is going to be sort of a maintenance week for me as well. So I wanna share that with you guys because again, like I said, this is a mini cut for me. The total working weeks that I am aiming for is 8 weeks. And I don't have like a specific deadline. Like I don't want to drag this out till the end of the year. I want to end this mini cut in September. When we get back from Cabo, I am going to try and just hit it hard for another couple weeks and finish out this mini cut, hit my 153 and be done, and work on just maintaining and working on my lifts and getting strong. And that is the game plan. So for yourself, if you are looking at, I have been in a cut for 12 weeks, 16 weeks, whatever that is, and you feel like, man, it's been slow, take a look at what weeks maybe you weren't 100%. Maybe you were sick, maybe you traveled, had vacation. You can't count those weeks. Those weeks don't go towards your diet phase. So pull those out, figure out how many weeks that were actually working weeks, and then you can determine, okay, I've lost X amount in this time frame. That's an average of 0.8 pounds per week or 1 pound per week, and then determine if that is within the range of acceptable fat loss. And that's how I would do that. So yeah, we're gonna go to Cabo. I don't plan on, I might get a session in. I don't really have expectations that I will train when I'm there, but we'll see how it goes. And I'll give you guys an update on that. And then again, when I get back, I'll have a couple weeks to just finish out this fat loss phase and be done with it. That said, I did get a question on my Instagram asking about mini cuts for athletes. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that here. I think it's a great question. Are mini cuts necessary? Are they helpful? Are they not helpful? And I really think it depends on where you're at in your journey. So if you're somebody who is in a build phase and your goal is to put on as much muscle as possible for some time in the future, you don't want to interrupt that build with a mini cut if you can avoid it. It could be useful for somebody, say they start to gain body fat too quickly for some reason. And that shouldn't happen if you're following a plan. But let's hypothetically say you are putting on too much body fat too quickly, or you start to bump up against like your upper limit threshold of how much body fat you care to put on. You could do a mini cut, but it does really sort of take away from the time that you could be building. And it does take your body to sort of ramp up into these build calories and to start to see muscle growth. So remember, if you are doing everything right, as a female, we expect maybe 1 to 2 pounds of lean tissue gained per month. That's not a lot. And especially if you are a taller woman, you have more surface area to fill in. 1 or 2 pounds of muscle is not gonna look like anything on you. It won't really be noticeable until you start to put on like 6 to 10 pounds of muscle. And women, especially when you're leaner, once you go up about 10 pounds, you will feel 10 pounds heavier, and it's not fun. A lot of women don't like that, especially once they have that contrast of what it feels like to be smaller. If you are doing everything right, you're training hard, you're focusing on progressive overload, you're focusing on your technique and your intensity, and you are eating well, right? You're eating, following a meal plan, you're not consuming too much of an excess of calories or too much junk food, really sticking to the plan, you will slowly gain and have a lot of control, for lack of a better word, of how quickly the scale goes up. If you start to put on too much muscle too quickly, you're an anomaly, basically. I don't want to say this as a blanket statement, but I don't think that most women, if they start a build lean enough, they don't need a mini cut, and I would probably avoid it if possible. There are some cases where it could be beneficial, like say you were trying to get ready for stage and you want to see kind of where you're at and you have a long enough time. And I mean, you need more than a year at least to be able to do a mini cut and then go back into a build. You could do that to sort of test the waters and see where you're at. And see how your body responds to a diet phase. That's one scenario. But I really think for the vast majority of people, it's just totally unnecessary. I am doing a mini cut right now because I was in a build, I was heading a different direction, and then decided, no, I don't want to go this direction. I don't need to gain more muscle at this stage in my life and in my competition career. I sort of ended that build and wanted to come into my maintenance and just sort of sit here until I decide what direction I'm going next. I still don't know if I'm competing next year or not. So again, there's really no reason for me to carry a bunch of extra weight around. And especially for the category that I plan to compete in, I'm pretty much there. So there's that. But I don't think that most people really need, especially athletes that are wanting to gain muscle, I don't think that they need to do a mini cut and probably should avoid it if possible. All right, second question. What advice would I give to a 30-year-old female starting to train at the gym for the first time? Oh man, I mean, I would just say, what would I give myself? When I started, I was in my like mid to late 20s, and I really tried to just consume as much information. Like once I was exposed to bodybuilding specifically, I just tried to consume as much information as I possibly could. Now I say that with one caveat, there was no social media back then. I think that year Facebook just became, what's the word I'm looking for? Like it wasn't just for college students anymore. They opened it up to non-college students. If you're old enough to remember Facebook, you had to have a college email address to create an account. You had to be enrolled in a university when they first started it. So it was really for college students. And that was pretty much it. So where a lot of people get their information these days is from social media and just following posts and experts and stuff. Back then, I had to like read articles and read research studies and experts who posted on things like bodybuilding.com, T Nation. There were a couple other websites that were dedicated to bodybuilding. I remember they were like black websites with white fonts and those old school websites. And I just consumed everything I possibly could. So my advice is 2 years into that, but almost 3 years into that, I was so deep down the rabbit hole that I also then realized like, oh, I could hire someone to help me with this. Because again, coaching wasn't really a big thing. If you were in the gym scene, you sort of like collaborated. Like you had friends who were into lifting weights and you just sort of like chummed around at the gym, like, just hung out. So I was exposed to bodybuilding through a gym that I went to. I was living in LA at the time. Learned enough to realize like, oh, I could hire somebody to help me, like a coach. And even then it was online coaching technically, but it was really just email. Like I just emailed her back and forth. I learned so much and got so much further I think I worked with her for almost 6 months at the time. I learned so much in that time frame, like more than I did in the 3 years by myself. I still think it's great for somebody to take initiative and do some legwork on their own because it really just shows like commitment and dedication. But I truly believe the shortcut to your goal is to get somebody who has a lot of experience, who can guide you, and you will get there faster. That is the shortcut. Learning from somebody else who's been there. So I hired her, and then that really just started a whole other, I probably should do a video on that sometime too. One of the things is a coach will also be able to help you map out your goal. So depending on, I don't know this person's body type, if you have body fat to lose, if you're skinny fat, like I don't know where this person's at. So the strategy might not be a diet phase. The strategy might be maintenance, or it might be a build phase. The workout split could be very different. The macro split, or maybe even following a meal plan. So a coach will help just lay that out for you. And then it's also like, you're going to be this many weeks in this phase, followed by this many weeks in the next phase. And they all sort of like, it's just the roadmap, I guess. I don't know how to say it. I guess it's just how to get from point A to point B. So advice is to get a coach. That would be my biggest thing. I'm a product of coaching, and also not just in fitness. I've had life coaches, I've had business coaches, I have tens of thousands of dollars invested in coaching. I'm a huge believer in it. And yeah, I also think time is of the essence. It would take you a lifetime to learn everything that somebody else already knows. So the more that you can just get that, it consolidates, it shortens the learning curve, and also helps prevent you from making mistakes. This person, again, young 30s, you can spend years making the wrong mistakes. You can spend years making the wrong choices and hopping from thing to thing. And, I cannot tell you how many women have told me that they're in their 50s now and they wish they found me 20 years earlier. I hear that very often. So that is my advice. Last question for today. What is a refeed meal and how do you know if you need one? How often should one refeed? That is an awesome question. Refeed meals are essentially an injection of additional calories above your normal eating dietary patterns. And also usually, not always, but usually it's also different food choices. You might be following a meal plan where you eat certain types of protein, certain carbohydrates, and maybe sort of avoid other things. And sometimes a refeed meal might include things that are off plan that you wouldn't typically eat. I might say, it could be a pasta dish or Italian food or sushi, just something that might not be on your regular menu. And again, even if it is on your normal menu, it could also be just an addition of more calories. First of all, you don't necessarily need a refeed meal. If you are following macros, you can already introduce and be flexible with what types of foods you have. You probably, depending on what phase you're in, you might be able to fit pizza in. I don't know what your macros are, or a cheeseburger, whatever. So that is possible. So there are three main reasons I can think of that somebody might have a refeed meal. The first reason, I'll just speak from a lifestyle perspective. Some people psychologically need a break from their sort of diet, whatever their normal eating protocol is. And when it comes to lifestyle, the psychology of it is incredibly important. Not everybody's like this, but I do work with clients who I just know their personality type, and it's better for us to incorporate a refeed meal. It could be weekly, it could be every other week, it could be once a month. That just gives them a little bit of just psychological freedom, where they can just not track and it's just enjoyable. And if that one meal helps that person be compliant the rest of the week or the rest of the month, that's the way to go. But again, not everybody needs that. So that is a real case by case. There is no necessarily physical benefit that somebody gets from it. It's more a psychological thing, and then anticipating if they didn't have the refeed, eventually they're just gonna let all this tension build up and then they're just gonna binge eat for an entire day. So rather than having someone just do that on their own accord, we sort of put a strategy in place to prevent that binge scenario from happening. It's sort of like the refeed is part of the plan. If you don't eat this extra meal, then that is actually a deviation, sort of like a reverse psychology thing. So that would be one instance that a refeed meal is beneficial. Another instance would be what happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I had drastic weight drops where I dropped almost 4 pounds within a few days. My metabolism just really sped up, just everything was just sort of syncing up, and you don't want these big drops. It really does sort of mess with your whole mood and energy. I mean, I was feeling like death for 3 days. So the injection of those extra calories helps to slow down that loss, because you really can't sustain that rate of loss. You really feel unhealthy, and then also because I was feeling so crappy, that was a week that I think I missed 2 sessions that week, which is not what you want. So when somebody starts dropping body fat too quickly, then that might be a situation where you would incorporate a refeed meal. Okay, and then the third reason that somebody might do a refeed meal, now this is actually opposite than the first two. The first two have more to do when you're in a dieting phase. The third reason is more for somebody who is in a maintenance or a build phase. Now, I work with a lot of women, and a lot of women often undereat, and they're not used to eating more calories. I also see this with women who are just smaller people, smaller bodies. And they just have a hard time eating all the calories required to hit their weekly caloric total. So again, in maintenance or in a build, I might utilize a refeed meal to sort of sneak in extra calories. So can keep the person's calories at an acceptable level that they can get everything in, digest it, don't feel too weighed down, but hey, have a family night, have a date night, go have some cheesecake. A lot of times, regardless of the person, they have no problem having one meal where it is like a 3,000 calorie meal, because let's face it, you can go to Cheesecake Factory and get a salad that's a 2,000 calorie salad in one sitting. So giving somebody a weekly refeed meal in those situations can help to bump up their overall caloric intake for the week, thus putting them either at maintenance where they need to be, or in a build if we're trying to get them to eat more calories to build muscle. So it is a little bit more of a strategic thing when you implement these, not just like, oh, I feel like having it, or I just want to have a cheeseburger or whatever. It's not a reward. So refeed meals should not be looked at as like, this is a reward for doing a good job. It should be intentional and have a purpose, and fit within the overall plan of like your caloric goals that feed into your overall body composition goals. Hope that makes sense. I'm sure there's a couple other things that I haven't thought of just off the top of my head right now, but those are the three main reasons that I would incorporate a refeed meal and definitely serve a strategic purpose in somebody's overall plan. But again, this is a case-by-case thing depending on the person that I'm working with, and also for myself when I might do a refeed. But you could also be somebody who doesn't ever need a refeed. They're definitely not necessary. It's sort of a tool in the toolbox that can be used to help with your overall game plan. So, and again, this actually feeds back to my last question. How would the everyday average person know this? You probably wouldn't, because that's not your area of expertise. And if you're not looking at all these little factors, then how would you know? And how, if you don't know what you don't know, so how would you be able to determine like, this is what I need to do? So working with a coach obviously can help to give you more experience with that, at least for yourself, and then be able to start to learn what your patterns and needs are as you are going in your fitness journey. So, all right, that is the recap for week 5 and week 6. I hope this was helpful for you guys and gave you some perspective that you can apply to your own fitness journey. Certainly, if you have any questions or comments, drop them below, and I'll be sure to cover those in the next video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.